Hi there, welcome to this VDV webinar where we are looking at the new Campbell Scientific integration directly into VDV web interface. This new feature will allow you to connect and collect data from Campbell Scientific dataloggers directly through the VDV web interface. It will also allow you the option to send commands to the datalogger, and that's something that we will take a look at as well. Today we have here CR300 with a built-in cellular modem. It is simply logging here battery and panel temperature for this test. And we also have connected to it a small light that we are hoping to activate here using the commands, but more on that later. With me are Ólafur and Guðmundur. They will be answering your questions, so feel free to ask questions here on the right hand side. Also, as always, send us an email if you have questions after this webinar to support@vista-datavision.com. So let's get started and log in to our system. It is completely blank system. We do not have anything set up, and we are simply going to start with connecting to our data logger and fetching the data. The Campbell data source will be found under the data source option in the menu, and there we will find CSI. As I said, we do not have anything in the data. Here I'm going to set up my first data logger. What you need to have is the IP address, the public IP address or the IP address on your APN network. You need to have the port and the username and password to the data logger. I'm going to simply click here plus to add a new data logger, and you could have one data logger, 5 data loggers, 10, 20, 50, 100 data loggers set up. So I'm going to add my IP address and my username and my password. It is a good practice to change the username from admin to something else, and also look at the port to change that from 80 to a different port. So we click connect. The system, the server, is connecting to the data logger through the API, and it is fetching the information from the logger. First of all, we see here at the bottom the output tables. In this data logger, we only have one table, simply called test, and I can check it to say, okay, I want to fetch this data table. If you had more than one table, they would be listed there, and you could select one or more tables from your logger. We need to give this data logger a name. I'm just going to say here CR300 webinar. And I need to select the type. So this is going to be a CR300, but you could also have here CR1000 or CR6, for example. Quick description about the data logger. I'm just going to type in here my data logger, where it's located, and so on. Nothing else that we need to do. One thing that we can do is we can expand the output table just to see what we have in this table. We see here we have the battery, we have the panel temperature, and information about those variables. Again, if you would have more than 2, they would be listed there. We then click Save. Now the system will fetch or connect to the data logger and start fetching the data. This process depends a little bit how much data obviously you have in the data logger. If it has been up and running for a long time, it could take a little bit longer time to fetch all of the data. So while we are waiting here for in a couple of minutes, it is a good practice to take a look at a couple of other items. First of all, once we have set up a new site, simply go to Setup and Site. All right, the site hasn't been inputted yet. Let's give the system 1 or 30 seconds. While we wait for that, let's go to setup and a contact. Because I want to tell the system if my data logger goes offline, I want to be notified. So I'm going to create a quick new contact with just support@vistadatavision.com as my email and click save. I will do a quick contact group, and a contact group is consisting of one or more contacts that will receive emails or text message alarm if something happens. So I'm just going to type in here VDV support and nothing else I need to configure here. Finally, I need to add myself to my group. If I would have more people that wanted to receive the emails or text message that the data logger is offline, I could add them here. And in this case, I'm just going to send myself an email. I could also send myself email and text. So now I've set up this contact information to be able to send myself email alarms. So we are going here to go back to our setup and site. Now we see the data logger has been set up, and I want to click here edit. So it is a good practice to do this when you import a new site. First of all, we would want to set our time zone of our data logger. Secondly, we can choose the type. If it's a specific type, in this case it's going to be a water station, or groundwater station in this case. So I have a specific icon on our site map. And I'm going to move my icon here approximately to the location of my data logger. I could upload pictures of my station if I had those, and I'll also add a quick description. CR300 water station located in Reykjavik. Finally, good practice is to change the alias names to battery, and could be here panel temp, and set the units. So the unit here for my battery is going to be volt, and it is going to be degrees Celsius for my panel temperature. So now we have set everything up. We have set the station type, the time zone. We have added quick description and the alias names and the units. So we click update. The next thing that we can do is to take a look at, again, the data source and the CSI option. Right here, we have a small icon, which is like an eye icon. We can click on it. It will connect to the data logger, and it will show us the status, the public table, and the tables that are available in the logger. So this is good to make sure everything is okay. The time or the clock in the data logger is okay. You can see everything about the status of the data logger. You can take a look at the public table, and this table or this view is then updated every couple of seconds while you have this window open. Finally, I can take a look at my test table and see the information or the results here for the past couple of readings. We can see that this table is being logged every 10 seconds in this test. So just a good option to make sure everything is okay, and also to be looking at the public table if you are doing some tests either on site or at the office. Let's now do a quick dashboard of our data. You go to setup and dashboard. Create a new dashboard. I'm going to say here CR300 webinar is my dashboard name. And I'm going to add a one graph here. On the first graph, I just want to have my battery. You can see the alias names have been updated in my system. So I select my battery. I only have short amount of data as the data logger has just been online for an hour or so. And also want to add a numeric indicator with my battery as well, which is going to show the last reading. I want to do the same for my panel temperature. Click select. And I'm also going to add a numeric indicator. So just a quick dashboard. Now the system is fetching data from the data logger. Dashboard is being updated and we have visualization of our data. I'm going to change the scale here maybe to 2 days because we don't have so much data. All right. The item that I was looking at before is to set up a contact and a contact group. What we want to do is we want to go to setup and data update because I want to have Vista Data Vision send me an email if my data logger goes offline. In this case, I'm interested in getting an email if no data is inputted into the database for 90 minutes and 1.5 hours. I will select my contact group. So the system will send me an email saying here CR300 webinar test. Hasn't been inputting any data for 90 minutes. Last timestamp is here, this specific date. So I can then go take a look at the data logger if the battery is down, if the communication has some issues or something, some issues with the data import. So really important to do this for all of the sites that you are importing. Nothing else that I need to do. That is it. So very simple to do, and now the system will constantly be checking for the last timestamp. So what we have done now is to add the data logger. We have set up the contact and contact group. We have set up the data update alarm. We also created a dashboard with our data. So the data logger is online, everything is being fetched. Now we are going to take a look at the command option. Maybe first thing to note is that if you're only interested in sending commands, you can set up the data logger in the data source setup, and you can simply choose no data tables, meaning the data logger, the VDV system is not fetching data. You could still use LoggerNet to do that, or FTP or whatever you want to do, but you're only using Vista Data Vision to do the commands to the data logger. So in this system, we have this light, as I mentioned, connected to the data logger. So we're using the 12-volt switch option, which is connected to a relay, which is then sending a opening and closing the relay, which is turning on our light. So this can be anything on site. This could be, for example, opening and closing a valve, changing pump flow, could be turning on a light, a siren, but it could also be modifying the sampling rate. So let's say you are sampling every 1 hour, something happens, you want to get data every 1 minute, you could send a quick command to the data logger to make that happen. But what we need to take a look at in the data logger is actually the program. So what is happening when you send a command? You are changing a status of a public variable. So in this case, we have here a public variable simply called light. So when we are sending a command, we are changing the status of this public variable. And we need to program that into the data logger what each status is supposed to do. In this case, we have three options for our light. We have the status of the light 0, no light. We have 1, which means it's going to be just a light on it. And then if we send 2, it is going to flash every half a second or so. So if we look at the program, then it simply is here, if light is 1, then we have a function light on equals 1 and flash on equals 0. So we're just telling in the program what is supposed to happen if we send 1 into this public variable, if we send 0, and if we send, if we send 2, and then if we send 0. So this is something that needs to be programmed on the datalogger site. Could obviously be multiple commands that you can send to the datalogger. One to open a gate, one to turn on a siren, and one to increase the sampling rate. So just make sure that you program that into the datalogger. So let's start with sending or set up our command. We go to data source and CSI, and in the top right hand corner we can see commands. I have here a list of all kinds of commands that I have access to in this account, but I'm going to create a new command. First of all, we need to give this command a name, something that we can easily find later on. I'm going to name it change light here webinar. Then I need to select which datalogger I'm going to send this command to. In this case, it's going to be my CR300 webinar. It will connect to the datalogger here quickly, and it will give me the option to which table I'm going to send this command to. In this case, it's going to be my public table, and it will then fetch everything from the public table and give me my public variables. Here I can see here my panel temperature, battery, flash on, and light. You remember from the program our public variable is simply called light that we want to change. And then in the program we are telling it what to do if something happens. Then there are 3 options for commands, command types. First of all, just a Boolean. If it is so, it's just a switch, on and off switch. So if it is true, it could be 1. If it's false, it could be 0. Then again, in the program, you would take 1 and 0 and make something happen. The other option, or next option, is a numeric, meaning you will just have an input field where you can type in numbers. You can say the minimum is 0 and the maximum is 10, or 0 to 100, or 0 to 1, whatever you want to do. And then you can decide the precision allowed. Could it be just whole numbers, or 1 or 2 decimal points? If it is like this, it means that you will get a pop-up window and you could type in the numbers 1, 2, all the way up to 10. If you allow precision 1, you could type in, for example, 5.5. And then you are changing, for example, the status of a pump going to 55%. The next option is a list, and that's something that we are going to use today. We are just going to have a list. That means if you want to send a command, you will just get a drop-down list that you can choose from. Let's start off with light off. If the value is 0, then I want to have my light off as I have programmed it. Lights on is the value 1 of my light public variable. And I programmed it so it's going to flash or blink if I change this public variable to 2. And quick description just about what this command does. So now I have set up 3 items in my list: light off, light on, and flash. I click save. I can quickly here locate my command, and I can click here on the up arrow to send the command. It will pop up this window. Current status is 0, light off. and I can simply choose from a list what I want to do. Let's go and turn on the light. Again, the data logger is connected to the mobile network, so the server is sending a API command to the IP address into the data logger, and the data logger is opening up a relay which is turning on our light. Let's see what will happen. We will need to type in our password to confirm it. And the light turned on. I'm just pointing the light here behind me. I could turn the light off, and in 1 second or so, the light is off. I could even go here and do the third option, which is light blinking or light flash. You can see the light is going on and off constantly on my wall behind me. You might say it's maybe a bit strange to go into data source, Campbell scientific data source, go to command to actually send the command. What you can do is you can actually go to a dashboard and you can add a button on your dashboard to send this command. So it will make it easier to find and easier to use the command just when you're looking at your data. So in the type, you have an option called data source command. I will just label it, change light, and you can choose colors of your button. Then I need to select which command I want this button to be linked to. In this, it is change light webinar, meaning I have a button on my dashboard connected to this specific command, and let's see what will happen. I just click apply and update. We go to our dashboard. We have now this button here. If I click on it, the same interface as before will appear. We can go here, turning on our light. So directly from the dashboard, you have access to the command option as well. And as I said earlier, here you could have one command or multiple commands. So you just have 1, 2, 3, 5, 10 of these buttons where you are making changes to the data logger on site. I'm going to turn this off again. So just a very simple yet powerful tool to be able from the web interface easily to make these changes on site. And very simple to set up. You are changing a variable in the data logger. You have programmed in the data logger what should happen. And as I said, it can be used in numerous different ways. So just a very interesting new feature. There is one thing that somebody might say, what about the access control? If I have this on my dashboard, could anybody that has access to it send commands and make changes to my data logger? That's something I do not want to do. That's a good question and something that has been thought of. If we go to user setup, if you create a new user, under data source, you will see the option here to run command. If the user does not have access to the run command, he's unable to actually send commands to the data logger. So make sure that only users that are supposed to be able to make changes to the data logger, make something happen on site, have access to the run command feature. Let's take a look at the dashboard here quickly again. So we have gone over today to set up a new data logger. We have set up data update alarms, contact and contact groups. We have created our dashboard. We have quickly created a command gone over the 3 options in the commands. We have looked at the program, how we are programming this command into the data logger, and we have sent commands, changing status of our light, added the command button to our dashboard, and looked at the access control. So there is nothing more to it. We are releasing this, or we have released it here recently, so it should be available in the next couple of days. We are rolling this out to our users. If you're not seeing it in your user menu, send us an email to support@vistaDataVision.com. As always, take a look at help.vistaDataVision.com and also youtube.com/VistaDataVision. Subscribe to our channel. We are then always publishing both these webinars, and we are also publishing a shorter videos where we are explaining specific features. So make sure to to follow us there to have all of the latest information. But that is it today. Hope to see you again soon. Take care. Have a good day. Bye-bye.